Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. Well, I've got a full panel in the house today. I'm joined by Jason, my co-host from Watch Rolling.
Hello.
I'm joined by Terry, who's a member of our Facebook group, but you also got an Instagram account that you're quite active on, Terry.
Yeah. I post quite a few pictures up there now and again just for fun, and people seem to like them, so why not?
Why not? Steve, thanks for joining us.
How's it going?
Awesome. Pete from Not So Obvious Watches, great YouTube channel, check it out. And Todd, our Seiko chronograph expert. Thanks for joining us, Todd. And actually, you sort of tied to this show now, aren't you? I should give a third plug for my show. Okay, guys. Well, should we kick it off with? We've got a full bar menu tonight, which we'll go through. But should we start with a wristwatch check? Why don't we go? Todd, do you want to go first, and we'll go bottom up?
Sure. I'll pull it off so it's easier to see. So not to disappoint this time, I do have a Seiko chronograph.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
So now this one, if it can focus, I'm using a different camera, and of course I'm getting
I can see it.
Got it. This is not one that's as widely known. This is a 6139 7002. So it's not the Pogue case. It's a different brushing, and this one's all original from Japan. And you can see the brushing, the case is a little different. And anyhow, it's a light blue dial. It's hard to find these dials of this color in the old ones. And so, yeah, it's a fun watch to wear. It's also good to show that, hey, there's something other than a Pogue in a 6139.
Very nice.
Is there, though, Todd?
Well, yes and no.
Pete, what are you wearing?
I took one off so it's easier to show. It is a 1973 Breitling reference 2214 little surfboard manual wind chronograph.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Nice, yeah.
I was sure you were going to say Bulliver then, because they've got a similar one, haven't they? Bulliver.
They do.
I don't own a Bulliver.
Yeah, no, I don't actually. Steve, what are you wearing?
Yeah, so today I have my Sin 144. This is a PVD black model that I guess came out as a special edition maybe about 10 years ago. I think Zen actually made another one maybe a year or two ago, but I always was interested in PVD chronographs ever since I was a kid. And so this was one of my first real big watch purchases. And so, yeah, don't wear it often, but always very happy anytime it's on my wrist.
Yeah, and that's the one that looks close to the original Top Gun, the Porsche design one.
It does, yes.
Terry, what are you wearing? I'll make you solo.
What I'm over here in Florida on holiday, so I've got a couple of watches with me. I've got my gold dial Seiko speed timer.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you can see that properly there.
How do you like the dial on that one, Terry?
I love it.
I've never seen one in real life.
When it first came out, I was straight on them and got the black dial version. But as soon as I got home, I'd realized I'd made the wrong choice. So very quickly I got hold of the gold dial as well. But gold dial, it just pops every time I look at it. I just love it. So and it's different. It's a different color dial than you usually see. So yeah, I love that watch.
Nice.
And I've also brought over my new Studio Underdog Goofy Panda.
Oh yeah,
the first one off the line on the phase 2. Richard Bank, who I've chatted with and met a few times, managed to get me this one as quickly as possible so I could bring it over to the States with me to wear. And yeah, another fantastic, lovely watch with a seagull movement.
Seagull, yeah.
It's gorgeous. And the dial, I don't suppose the camera does it justice, but the fading and the detail is just stunning. Stunning watch.
Yeah, John at Tea and Tickers, he's a big fan. He's just had one in for review. And I know the guys at Scottish Watches, huge fans, aren't they? Studio Underdog. Jason, what you... sorry, guys, as well. We're having a slight little issue with Terry's audio. Slight cracking, so we apologise, but we definitely wanted him on. So just apologise in advance. Jason, how are you? What are you wearing?
I'm doing good. My Zodiac.
Yeah. Zodiac.
I've been on a real kick with this one lately, the Zulu Oscar 9209. on a gray fluted NATO from Mushi watch straps. Just one of my favorite things to wear. And interestingly enough, it started to really change my mind on case dimensions. Like I used to think, because I have a 7.5-inch wrist, that 40 millimeters was like, at one point I thought it was too small, and now I'm like, I find myself wearing it more and more because it's less bulky than some of the other ones I have. So I'm kind of at an impasse as far as whether I'm going to offload some stuff that might be a little bit bigger or not. I don't know yet. Yeah. Except for the Bell and Ross, Todd. That's not going anywhere.
You better not offload that.
No, that's staying with me
forever.
Offload,
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go next. I'm wearing me a little green Date Just. I put it back on the Jubilee. I was wearing it on that green rubber. But in between putting it on the Jubilee, taking it off the rubber, putting it on the Jubilee, I threw it on a NATO, and it was primarily to wind John up at Tea and Tickers. But I haven't got a picture of it, so if you want to see it on the NATO, I wore it on his live stream. I think it was Tuesday's live stream. So if you want to see a Date Just on a NATO, green NATO, it was over there. Well, before we dive in, let's just say hello to a few people. So, yeah, hi to Red Shovel. Thanks for joining us. Batch Guitar. Thanks for joining us. We had Jeremy said Sharp Breitling. And then we've got Cherish Watch Time in the house. Thank you. We've got another Sam, who is a new subscriber to the YouTube channel. So I was having a good chat with him in the comments.
I like his hair.
Yeah, yes. And then
full color.
We got? Yeah, let us know, guys, how you getting on and what you're wearing. Awesome. Well, on the bar menu tonight, we've got gut or brain. And we'll explain that a little bit more as we go through. Do you set the date on your watch? This will be an interesting conversation. You saw the thumbnail, so we're definitely going to talk about our crypto and watch markets crashing linked. And then if we've got a little bit of extra time, we're going to talk about Joma Shop and something Jason spotted. But let's go with let's go with the first one. And Pete, I won't take credit for this one. This was one of yours, wasn't it? This gut or brain one?
Yeah, it came down to the simple question of how do we buy our watches? Do we think through them, or do we just sort of see it, like it, and move forward? One of the things I want to stress here, this is not necessarily a divide about do you buy on specs and value versus do you buy on aesthetics. I think, in fact, in some ways, it's more about how you look at a watch and enjoy the way it looks. I hear so many people say things like, I don't really have to think about it too much. I'll know within 2 seconds whether I like this watch or not. I trust my gut. I go with that. Whilst at the same time, over on, say, like if you're talking to someone about art or something, they'll say you won't really understand a picture. You won't understand what's going on and whether you like it or not until you've spent 5 to 10 minutes looking at it. And that's what got me thinking, how do people pick their watches? Do they look at it and within seconds go, that's for me or not for me, and then just move on, never coming back, going with their gut? Or do they think through it and think about what a watch is and what it means in history and where it fits and where it might fit in their collection and what the designers were trying to achieve, and let their kind of understanding and feelings about the watch develop? I suppose the little tagline is also, do people know why they like what they like? Do they look at something and just go, I like that, but have no idea why? Or are they able to say, I know the kinds of things I like, I know why I like those, and that's what I'm looking for. So I'm very much a brain guy. I don't allow myself to make a decision on do I like a watch or don't I for at least 30 minutes. After I see it and I've dived in, I just park that and say I will decide in 30 minutes how I feel about this watch. Now, I'm wondering how other people are.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. Who wants to dive in on that one?
I just got a proposal real quick. So how we have Watch Judge Todd? I think we need to have watch psychiatrist or psychologist Pete,
Yes.
and he needs to get dressed up and just talk to each one of us one on one while we're sitting on a sofa. But anyways, good. I love your questions, Pete.
Yeah, no, it is a great question. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll dive first. I think I've changed. I think I was very much a gut person where I was like, yeah, I really like it, and then I added it to the collection, and then now I'm a lot more intentional. I think is probably the word the kids are using these days. Intentional about. I really do think about a watch purchase before I do it now, but I think I'd definitely go back and forth. But it's funny, Pete, because I hear I often watch like films and I really enjoy them, and then I'll go on and watch reviews after I've watched the film, and sometimes it just changed my mind. Sometimes I'm like, did I enjoy that? Oh, that is a good point. Yeah, they definitely they did leave that as a loose end. So I don't know whether I sometimes feel responsible as a watch reviewer not to you got to be careful not to be too over the top either way, like too high praising or too low, in case it changes somebody whose opinion who's actually got it. But that's my 2 cents. I don't know, Steve. Do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't know. I feel like most people are going to say gut, and the reason I feel that way is that there's nothing about this hobby that is rational in any way. I mean, we're collecting outdated technology if you really think about it, and spending thousands and thousands of dollars to do so. So this is very much a passion, and I think gut falls definitely into that passion category. That said, I definitely understand, the desire to be more balanced in your approach and kind of have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. And I think if you only rely on gut, then maybe you're just going to buy 100 watches, or you're going to have no direction. You don't know what to do. So I think there needs to be some balance there. I think for myself, I'm probably 70% gut and 30% brain. I'd like it to be maybe more 50-50, but at the end of the day, I think this is about a passion and something that you're interested in, and you see something that you like and instantly know, gosh, this is really something I want, or this is really something I don't want.
I suppose the challenge I throw out when people say, it's about passion and I don't want to overthink it, is we know that we are influenced by what other people are doing. So, because that's just part of the human condition. So
Sure.
if you don't think about it, and if you just go by gut, how can you ever know if you're not just buying stuff because of what other people said?
Mm-hmm. Especially with Instagram, right? You see
Exactly.
what other people are buying, what other trends are going on, and you're influenced by those trends, whether you acknowledge it or don't.
Yeah. So if you never slow down to think about why do I want this, you're really at risk of just buying whatever Instagram told you should want.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, as a newer, still like as a relatively new watch collector, I mean, it was all based on what I stumbled across on YouTube initially. Like once I saw some video about time, and I saw something about watches, and it wasn't even anything in particular, but then I started like doing searches, right? And so of course, like, the usual suspects popped up. A couple of really slick production shows that might also be selling watches in their own store that they're talking about, which I don't have a problem with. This is America. Do what you got to do. But, as I've, like, Sam his taste has changed, my taste has changed, but mine is, I don't know about for Sam or not, but for me, it's been because I've actually bought stuff and got it, and I'm like, I don't really care for this.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It looks, don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, and I know the movement, it's great inside, but when I have it on me, it's little things, like, and we're going to talk about the date later. Like, I don't want to change the date, right? Like, I love this thing. No date. I know Sam's hair is on fire, but I have watches with the date, Sam, but I don't want them all to have dates because I don't want to have to change the dates all the freaking time, And they say it's the gut. I mean, you like what you like, but you don't really know what you like until you actually get it in front of you, I don't think, or in your hands. I don't think you can rationally say that. You can look at something on TV and say, oh, I like that. But then it can get there and it can show up and it's like, the car's not as fast as you thought it was going to be, or the leather doesn't feel as supple as it's supposed to be in the seats, right? And then you go trade it in for something else, or you regret the fact you have this car for the next 5 years. So my stuff's changed, and my collection is definitely streamlined. So much to the point where, like we talked about earlier, I'm thinking about selling some stuff off because it's just sitting there and I'm not really doing anything with it.
That's a good
I
point.
totally agree with you, Jason. I started off with the classic SKX 009. I think most people started off with that watch. And then I fell down the rabbit hole of YouTube and Instagram and quickly got up to 60 odd watches.
Yeah.
But recently, and I posted this on the Facebook group, I sold everything, completely cleared the decks. The only watch left was the SKX 009, which up until about 3 months ago, that's all I had. And now I'm starting again with a little bit more knowledge, knowing exactly what I like, what I don't like, what suits my lifestyle, what doesn't. And just slowly building up a 4, 5, 6 watch collection, which suits me rather than what suits Instagram and what suits YouTube. But it's sort of a journey, isn't it? It's sort of a learning experience. I've really enjoyed all the watches that I've had in my possession and sold on. Learned an awful lot. But now I'm really concentrating on the watches that I know I want, and a little bit more difficult to get hold of, but that's half the fun. Searching and finding the watches is half the fun for me.
Yeah, I'm in your camp as well, Todd. I know you're fundamentally opposed to selling off watches, aren't you? Or your babies.
Yeah, I would. I mean, it depends. So I was really thinking hard about this question because I just don't know, because I'm such, I have 3 engineering degrees. So therefore I'm very, whatever brain that is, right? I tend to think very logically, but it's funny is that with things like cars or watches or whatever, there's a lot of emotion in that. It's like, what does that design do to me? What's the history of the watch, or where was it used? That sort of thing. So like so is it rational that I have maybe 50 Seiko vintage speed timers, roughly? I mean, that's silly, right? But there's so much interesting in terms of the designs, the variants, and the history, of course, is really interesting. And so so I have that piece of me, but I also have other pieces of me that go after things like, vintage Accutron, or I have new Omega as an example, because I love the design language. And so, so I move around a little bit, and I don't sell usually. Once I get something, I seem to be good with it for the most part. I might do a little bit. I got some Seiko Turtles that are nice. I don't really wear them much. Maybe at some point I get rid of those, but I don't know. It's interesting. I wish I could put, like Steve put percentages, and I'm thinking like my math head says, just come up with percentages. I can't come up with percentages. I don't know where it is.
It's an interesting point you brought up, Todd, about the hemispheres of the brain, right? So, left brain, very analytical, logical, and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm really right-brained. Like I'm super right-brained. I like to draw and paint and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I could get paid to do that, I would. But I've made my living very much in a left hemisphere environment. The military, especially on ships and stuff, like you have to follow maintenance cards and all sort of stuff, right? But I learned early on that it's basically an open book test, right? That if I just do by the numbers what you're supposed to do, it's gravy, right? But as a firefighter, there's times where you're in a trainer or you've fought fires in real life. And it's not like the civilian world. You're out in the middle of the ocean. You have a fire. You don't got a choice. Like, we got to knock this thing out. We got to get it done. No one's coming to help us, right? But there's moments when you're in there fighting a fire, right? Based on whatever position you're on the hose or the team leader, where it's a very artful thing. And I know plenty of people who are like, we've kind of just stopped and watched the flames, watch the smoke. You got to listen for people saying stuff or noises of people or feel the movement. There's nothing logical about that. Mm-hmm. And it's this very right brain flowing kind of thing. But then you fall back on your training, which is very logical because you're taught like how to hold the hose a certain way and apply a pattern a certain way. So for me, like that, you brought that up. It's like, for me, it's become that. You just made me think about it. Like, I was very right brain going into this, and I got stuff, and I'm like, this doesn't logically make any sense for me. I don't like this thing. Let me sell it or give it away to somebody that can use it. And my collection is paring down to something that meets kind of in the middle. It's just the right amount of aesthetic with the kind of usage that I like for me. Mm-hmm. And then you made me think about that.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Like when I bought that Mont Blanc, the Nicholas Ryasek chronograph GMT, crazy design. I just saw that and I was like, oh, I love it. Now I did research and I found that, okay, it has this one problem when you buy it, But I remember when I think it was just getting into cars as a teenager, 11 or 12, and this shows you how old I am. I saw a Jaguar E-Type for the first time, and it just, I mean, that's it. It was love at first sight. And one day, of course, the prices have gone through the roof, but one day I would like to have one of those, just because it's just amazing engineering and beauty in motion. It's just staggering to me.
One thing I should stress, it's not about separating what you love from, and buying because it's got great resale value. I suppose a practical example of what I was thinking about is a couple of weeks ago, I saw a watch online and I thought that looks really good. And I would love to see one of those in the metal. I was actually kind of hoping I couldn't because it was quite an expensive watch and I didn't want to love it. But I swung past the local boutique in Melbourne where I am, and sure enough, they had it, and it is amazing. It's like far better in real life than it ever comes across on any video I've seen, and it was instantly in love. But I was reaching for my credit card when I said, no, I'm going to park this, go home, have a think about it, and think about, do I really love this? Am I doing this because of something else? Am I doing it because as a YouTuber, it would be, a great watch for me to have on my channel? Which is, by the way, Sam's nodding. I think this is something we sometimes think about.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I sort of, it's a rational way of looking at the things that are irrational. It is totally rational about why I love this, except it's a case of trying to unpick the influences and decide at the end that unreal, how do I put it? Trying to decide that irrational, illogical love is mine, and it's my love for that watch, not someone else's. And that's why I would say it's perfectly rational that someone who loves Seiko chronographs buys 63 of them. That makes perfect sense to me. So that's a completely rational response. Anyway, that's pretty much my take on it. And yes, in the end, I should say, in the end, I went back and threw my 30% deposit down, and now I'm scrambling to find the rest of the money.
Yeah, that was a great topic. Well, let's have a next topic we had on, and I don't know if this will decide who's allowed back on the live stream in future, but do you set the date on your watch, or should I say, what kind of monster doesn't set the date on their watches? I'm only joking.
You heard it here first.
I'm a big date fan. I love having the date on a watch. But this was another interesting one of yours, Pete. So I mean, I'm totally biased. I love the date on a watch, and I'm almost obsessive about setting it to the right day. But I can understand if you just picking it up and going, and it's telling the right time that the date's secondary. But I don't know what everybody else's opinion. You heard my opinion. I've said enough.
Sam. So if I got my collection to the point to where the only things that had dates were quartz watches, would that be acceptable?
Yeah.
Would you still allow me in the bar on Sundays?
Of course. You're
cool.
You're the co-host.
I'm only buying quartz date watches, everybody.
I don't know, Terry. Do you want to take a stab at this one? Do you have what's your view on the date?
Yeah, I'm quite lucky that I've got my this solar quartz, so I don't have to worry about that. That's always set for me. But I do have the Hamilton Khaki King.
There we are.
And when I do go back to that, I do quite enjoy resetting because it's got the large date print at the top, the full day text, and the way that snaps back into place when you're setting the time, and if you're going over that day, the way it snaps back in, I really enjoy that on that watch. So I don't mind it so much. And obviously my Studio Underdog hasn't got a date anyway, so that's the only watch really I have to worry about that. And on that watch, I quite enjoy doing it. What I would be like if I had a big, like I used to have quite a few dates, it was a bit of a pain if I'm honest, but I do enjoy that Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I suppose Steve and Todd, you've got vintage watches where setting the date sometimes is quite the operation, but I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, if you have a vintage watch that has no quick set date function, and it's the 30th day of the month and your watch is set to the second day of the month, I mean, trying to like get that to go over or going like all the way to 2 and then going back to 8, which kind of acts as a quick set function. I mean, it's a huge pain in the butt. So yeah, most of the time I don't do it unless, I feel like I have the time to do it or I have a quick set function on my watch.
Mhm.
To me, it's just not a really big deal because I have, I don't know, 30 pieces in my collection. And so I'm probably only going to wear something maybe one day a month or a couple days a month. So it doesn't bother me as much as if maybe I only had 1 or 2 pieces.
Right. I'm the same way. It depends on the watch. And if I'm just grabbing, like if I'm going through cycling through vintage pieces, and this shows you just how my brain works a little bit. So if I go back to this guy, if I can't, I got to think opposite. You'll notice that, you'll notice that it's a Roman date wheel and it's set for 5, but the date is right. So the day of the week is wrong, but the date is right. The reason is Seiko on these is a quick set, but you go through the date first before you get to the day. So if I were to set it on the right day, it would have gone past the date and I would have had to cycle the date through to get it. It's not a big deal because it's a push button. It's pretty easy. They did a pretty good job with these, but I'm like, I don't want to do that because I'm going to switch this out maybe for something else tomorrow. But if I'm wearing the Bucherer, which is an annual calendar with a big date, annual calendar on top, you better believe that that's going to be the right date showing because then it's glaring in your face that you have the wrong. And then why am I wearing an annual calendar if I'm not going to set it properly? So I don't know. It depends on how, what's going on and what I need to do. And by the way, quartz watches, they go off too. They're off usually at the end of the month, right?
Yeah,
so you
but
still are going to have to do that.
Todd, but it's like literally 7 seconds.
Click.
I mean, come on. Like, you would lose this in the courtroom right now. You would lose this.
Objection.
Objection.
Pete,
Your
I
Pete, the
don't.
final word goes to you on this one. Then.
I never set them. I just don't. In fact, it's really funny. This really slammed home to me. I did an Instagram photo, and someone came back at me and said, is it clearly an old photo? You're not where you said you were because the date's all wrong. And I went, you don't understand me at all. I have not. That's not entirely true. I set the date once every while just to make sure the mechanism's working. That's it. I can't remember the last time I set the date in a watch.
Yeah, well, there's Mark saying for him the date isn't important. Well,
I think this is kind of interesting though, real quick, Sam. That kind of ties into the previous topic we just talked about, where like if you're a new watch collector, you don't know any of this stuff, right? And there's so many BS videos out there that don't tell you how watches work. They just tell you which watches are cool, right? And so you buy this stuff, and let's say I go buy a vintage watch, and hopefully I don't get screwed, but I buy one and it's an actual vintage watch, and it shows up, and I got to go through the whole dissertation Todd just talked about for his Seiko chronograph. And then I throw the watch against the wall because I don't want to deal with that, right? And I'm out a couple $100. This is a plea to everybody, like anyone that makes content. I know one channel that does a pretty good job at it, but I don't know if we say names, but screw it. Long Island Watch, Mark's a watch and learn series. There's like over 100 videos.
Yeah.
And he teaches you how watches work. So like, if anyone's a newer watch collector, I recommend you go there and watch it because you can actually learn about certain types of watches and realize, I don't want to buy that. I don't want to deal with that. You know what I mean? And I fell into that trap early where something was cool. It looked cool. I got it. And I'm like, I ain't got the time for this. You know what I mean? And then I'm moving on. So I think it's an interesting connection between the two topics.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good point. We've got Frank in the comments is saying he doesn't get why people are obsessed with the date on their watches and whether it's at 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock or indeed anywhere else. Well, I am one of those people that is obsessed with the date. I don't know if I have a favorite position. I suppose 6 is good. Okay, well, let's get on to the main topic, the inspiration for the thumbnail, and it's around the cryptocurrency market and the watch markets decreasing. Are they somehow linked? And I got this idea for this one from, there was a Bloomberg article which basically said that the decrease in the crypto market is also causing a decrease in the watch market. So I'll do a quick intro to this one, everyone. So if anybody's not familiar what we're talking about cryptocurrencies, which are digital currencies. So things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And they essentially, if you're not familiar with what Bitcoin is, it's essentially a currency, an unregulated, decentralized currency that you can trade online. That the main coins are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other coins or tokens are built on top of those. So if you hear like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu and things like that, they're built on the Ethereum network. So there's true cryptocurrencies, and then there's ones that are functional around that. And the crypto market is crashing at the moment, and also arguably the watch market is as well. But the big losers in the watch market are things that were trading very high anyway at the moment. So the one that people always use is the Nautilus, the 5711A, which is the blue dial one. That's the one that's gone down the most. That was trading for like $240,000, and it's now at 190, and the Daytona and things like that. But these were ones that were being speculated, and cryptocurrency was already being speculated on. But the crypto market also suffered from, which a lot of these articles aren't covering, is there's been a lot of issues with crypto, theft. A lot of cryptocurrency has been stolen through scams, and also some big crypto companies that were doing things, investing in crypto or like crypto hedge funds, have also gone under as well. There's one called Celsius, and there was a few others. So there's actual additional fear in crypto that isn't necessary. There's some of it's linked to the the current economy, but it's not all to do that. And as you know more about crypto, there's several things at play here. And also crypto does do this. It goes drastically down and then drastically back up again. So Bitcoin in 2018, around Christmas time, was $19,000. And then it went to $4,000 for about 2 years. So there's definitely these kind of ebbs and flows in the crypto market. But the reason that people are linking the two together is because they're assuming that people who made a lot of money from crypto then invested in watches, and now they're seeing their crypto portfolios go down. They're then selling their watches off to compensate that. So this is kind of the guys behind the story of how people think, or the common belief of why the two things are linked together. So I guess I did a bit of a long intro there, but does anybody do crypto investing or has anybody bought coins?
No, not at all.
Nope. I only own in the New York Stock Exchange. I own Coin, the trading, I guess, house for different Bitcoins or different cryptocurrencies, but I don't own any individual cryptocurrencies. I don't understand it well enough to feel comfortable with it. I'm kind of like if I understand the industry well, I like to get into it in some form, but I just don't understand unregulated currencies very well.
Yeah, I and there's a few comments around this, I suppose. One, I don't think they're actually related. They kind of correlate and they kind of swim next to each other, but I don't. I think the crossover of people that are so heavily leveraged on their crypto investments that they have no choice but to sell their watches is probably really small. Those people will exist, but I don't think there's a lot of stuff there. What I suppose, in a sense, where I take issue is I don't think there is such a thing as the watch market. If you want to simplify it, there are two distinct watch markets, and it's all got to do with where the money's coming from. There's watch money in the watch market, and then there's investment money in the watch market. And there's two watch markets. There's the watch enthusiast market and the watch investor market. And if you look at the watch enthusiast market, it's going gangbusters. It's not crashing at all. Yep. Go to Chrono 24 and look at what's happening to the price of a 2020 Omega Seamaster 300M. Never been a hype beast, just a good solid watch that watch collectors love to buy. It's barely missed a beat. Do the same with a whole bunch of other just good solid watches that watch people like to buy, and they're just doing their thing, charging along, getting a little bit more, better or worse, getting a little bit more expensive every year. The only watches that I can see are having any discernible, real trend dip are those watches whose prices was not driven by watch enthusiast money.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're finding is it's probably unsurprising that in a world where interest rates are going up, prices are going up, there's some concern over what's going on with the economy, that investments in whatever, crypto, wine, art, the plain old everyday normal stock market kind of drop away. I suppose the only observation I'd say is that so far the investments in watches seem to be able to be handled by whoever it was that was investing in those. It doesn't look like anyone's getting margin calls saying you have to sell your Daytona tomorrow. It's what we can't really see it on these trends, but I have a suspicion that, again, using logic, using the trading lingo, I think the trading volumes are probably minute right now. My guess is people that are sitting on Rolexes they bought for $30,000 are just sitting on them. They're not going to sell them because then they realize the loss. But no one's dumb enough to buy them at $30,000 anymore. So everything's just locked in place. And that's why you see, if you do look at those graphs, they're all kind of tailed off. They're all just hovering now. I think that's probably what's going on.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that about like the true collectors holding on to the watches, because there is some similarities in the crypto market as well. And I'll just quickly show I don't think there's anything that's going to identify me on here, but I'll show you one of my crypto investments, and it's a coin called crypto.com. And the reason that I invested in it is that it has a functional use. So there's a card associated with it, and the crypto.com, the Crow coins, are a benefit that the card holders own. So it's like the interest is paid to them in coin, but also they've managed to turn the coin into a utility, so you can spend it via a card. And also they renamed the Staples Arena where the LA Lakers play the crypto.com arena. So they are planning for the future. But to your point about the true collectors are keeping it, you think that coins were being traded constantly. But the good thing with Coinbase here is it's actually showing the typical hold time is 108 days. So like some coins, like some watches, the true crypto investors, or the vast majority of them, are actually holding the coins, and it's only people that are getting desperate that are dumping them, which I imagine is probably what's affecting the watch market as well.
I thought that I heard something, I think it was on YouTube, where they quoted the statistic that only 10% of watch purchases, let's say new ones, are from enthusiasts, using the air quotes here, which means that 90% of the other ones are buying it because they're celebrating something, or they want to finally get to own that Rolex or that Omega or what have you. I don't know if that really is the right number, but if that's the case, do the watch enthusiasts have enough, effect on the marketplace to really do anything? I'm not certain if that's the case.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know where they did this polling at. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Let's be honest about it, right? Are they at a cash register every time someone's buying a watch? Excuse me, sir, are you a watch enthusiast? Mm-hmm. Or excuse me, ma'am. No, they're not. It's some random statistic they're tossing out there, and they don't know. And maybe like the smaller brands, right, that aren't attached to a giant conglomerate, right? Maybe they could get that information from them. But we all know who the largest watch group, quote unquote, in the world is. and
Yeah,
they
it's
have
slot.
maybe, you know what I mean? And then take a look at how many of those brands are actually enthusiast brands, and then how many of those brands are held up as like a watch you get when you have an accomplishment. And I think some of it's regional too, right? Because I've talked to people that are from other parts of the world, and I mean, we all know who the king is, I guess, but there's other brands that are bigger in different parts of the world, and they amount to an achievement or something, right? And so a person just knows, like, hey, I did this, I accomplished this, I want to purchase this to have it.
Yeah,
And,
like Longines is one, isn't it? In the
Yeah,
in
you
the
know?
Asian markets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, Terry.
One
What
of
do
the
you
ways-
think about this? Sorry, Pete.
I was just going to say, just to Jason, one of the ways they come up with that number, that 10% or something, is someone, I can't remember who it was, but I remember reading an article about it. It was based on a whole bunch of analytics of how many people are obviously involved in social media on watches, and then they compared that against other industry standards. Like, so if there's this many people in a field, say, posting on Instagram, and then you can kind of generally guess there's probably this many people outside of them who would be enthusiasts but not using Instagram, and then you just compare that to the number of watches sold, and then they say the number of people who are active in social media, talking about this hobby, talking about their watches, watching YouTube videos, and they were taking into account like view numbers on watches and things like that. Gives you compared to 20 million watches are sold every year, and it just they come up with this kind of around about 10% number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Terry, I was going to ask your opinion on this, because there's also we've been talking about, there was a supply and demand thing, but I noticed Watch Pros talked a lot about how the supply of watches raised in the UK, and they also speculated a couple of weeks ago that there was going to be a lot more Rolex coming to the UK that was being diverted from Russia, from the Russian markets. So I don't know if you heard anything about that, or what's your view on this?
Not over in the UK, no. And when you mentioned this subject, Sam, I know very little about Bitcoin and crypto. The only contact I've ever had is I bumped into a guy once because I was admiring his brand new Ferrari TDF, and I asked what line of business are you in, and he just said Bitcoin. That's all he said, and he was about mid-20s, and I thought, wow, I need to. So I did a little bit of look into it, but it wasn't for me. But when I read through the few articles that are online, like Bloomberg and Fortune, in relation to this correlation between the collapse in crypto and that ease in the supply of these sought-after watches, I also sort of noted on there that one of the big watch houses that had contributed to that said that this last year the sales have gone up 50% anyway. So I don't think there's an issue or a problem with supply and demand. The businesses out there, and especially for people around you mentioned the Patek Philippe Nautilus, the 5711. The retail on that is 35 grand, I think it was.
Yep.
And they're still trading for 190. So and it's a pretty good markup if you bought the right price. And collectors, from the collectors I know, they don't buy from the grey market. They built up their relationship with their dealers, with their Rolex dealers, with their Patek Philippe, and they're all buying at retail, and they won't go to the grey market because they know how the market works. So that's my only sort of little tip.
100%. That 100%. That's why I bought my Rolex at retail, and this is the second one I bought at retail as well. I wouldn't have. I mean, I love this Datejust, but I wouldn't have paid. I think these are trading for close to 20 now, just because it's just a new dial. It's just a new green dial, so it's not anything else. But I mean, that's an interesting discussion. I mean, we definitely didn't answer the question there, but I don't think that. I think it's more coincidental than a direct link. But I suppose a final kind of topic here, sort of loosely linked with this, isn't it, Jason? You were looking on Joma Shop, and you were quite shocked to see Zenith on there. Now, I don't know whether they've just recently come back on Joma Shop, but I've definitely seen them on Joma Shop in the past. And I know a lot of these brands were trying to move away from going the grey market. Well, it's not the brands, but they were trying to put certain restrictions in place so that watches wouldn't end up on the grey market. And I wonder whether this, because they are actually on, there is Zenith on there, but I don't know, Jason, you were quite shocked by this, weren't you? And you said that it might even have changed your mind on the brand itself.
Yeah, because I mean, I didn't even have an opinion on Zenith other than it would be an aspirational piece that I had to, if I got one, that I had to work a little bit to get to, right? But then I had been, I guess, collecting long enough to know that when Zenith started magically popping up on all the prime channels and media outlets that tend to sway public opinion, that I was like, okay, I'm going to sit back and just watch Zenith because it happens, right? This brand rides this crest of this wave and then it goes down, and another brand rides the crest of the wave and then it goes down. And so then when I saw Zenith pop up on Joma Shop, I was like, and it talks about something like me and like Pete had chatted about earlier in the Discord chat, right? Like it's all the ugly voter. And it's true. Pete, you hit the nail on the head, because I thought about that. I was like, yeah, like I can go find like a cool Seiko or a cool Hamilton on Joma Shop or something, you know what I mean? But even then, sometimes it's like a model that I've never seen anywhere. And it's like, well, I mean, I want a Hamilton, but I don't want any of these Hamiltons, you know what I mean? And then sometimes there's like, the good Hamiltons. But my point is that I didn't have an opinion of Zenith, but then with my limited knowledge of just enough to be dangerous in the watch collecting hobby, it tells me that Zenith pumps some money out, or whoever's in charge of Zenith, to get this mass media wave. They overestimated how much work that media wave was going to do for them. And now whoever had the Zeniths is stuck with them, and no one's buying them. And now they got to offload them on the quote unquote gray market, because it's Joma Shop, right? In order to get people to buy them. And the only way it changed my opinion is not so much like on the quality of Zenith or any of that stuff. It's just that it actually kind of changed my opinion on the hobby and who I'm going to watch, I guess, going on in the future. Because I could make a wanted poster of all the people that got up online and was like, Zenith is the greatest thing in the history of the planet. Go out and buy these Zeniths now, right? And then all of a sudden, well, I mean, are they? Now, it's a bunch of different models on there, but maybe like you guys are more experienced. Maybe I'm way off base, but
they definitely haven't got the hot models on here, have they? They haven't got the Chrono Sport or anything like that. But Steve, I guess you're quite well placed to comment on this, haven't you? Because you're a Zenith collector and fan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the brand. I think it's a really cool kind of alternative to, say, Omega and Rolex. I am very curious how they ended up, on Joma Shop. So, is it a situation where they thought they would have more sales this year? Is this a result of maybe closing boutiques in Russia? It's hard to say, but yes, it's very surprising. I personally don't think I would ever buy a watch of that caliber on Joma Shop. I think when you're spending that much money, I think buying from an AD is very important. These watches are not, you can't just take them to, the place in the mall and get it fixed, right? Mm-hmm. You want to have a good warranty with them. You want to have a good relationship with an AD who can service that for you. That's not something I feel confident in doing at Joma Shop. So for me, I would never personally consider it, although, maybe you can get a good deal on it and it's not a big deal. And the watch is perfectly reliable for you. So, it's caveat emptor with these watches. But it's very interesting that they have found their way onto Joma Shop.
Yeah, because this was a limited edition, to Jason's point. I'm sure this colorway, but I don't know. What does everyone else think?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there are so many different ways. To Steve's point, there are so many different ways that watches can find their way to Joma Shop that it's hard to know. It's difficult to sort of put your finger on it and say this is what must be going on. It could, and we've spoken about it before. It could be some distributor that was, whose job it was to buy inventory and sell to Russia, and suddenly he finds himself just sitting on a whole bunch of stuff, and he had to offload it fast and had to just take what he could get. Could be a boutique that just closed and the auctioneers came down, and Joma Shop just bought the stock. It's just impossible to know. There is a game that I am absolutely certain that that Joma Shop uses as well, and I don't think I checked some of the analytics. I don't think this is happening with the Zeniths, but quite often there's a number of watches which are much more expensive in the United States than elsewhere. And one of the things I am absolutely certain that Joma Shop is doing is having links with ADs in countries outside the United States. And then what they're doing is they're taking the tax off those watches, because outside the United States, pretty much every watch is advertised with the tax included. The US is one of the very few countries that doesn't include tax. I think what they're doing is they're buying that, assuming they're going to be able to get the tax back, then removing that tax from the watch and then selling it in the US as discounted by the amount of the tax reduction. So there's a number of watches I see there where I think they're selling watches at, and I'll talk openly, I'm talking about Breitlings, are the ones I watch. They'll say this Breitling is 10% off, and yet if I paid them, it would cost me more than if I just walked into an AD, put my card down and said, don't even talk to me about price, just take it. But Joma Shop are selling it as a discount. And I'm confident what they're doing is sourcing a watch from somewhere like my country, bringing it across, getting the GST back, and then selling it in America as 10% off, because that's our GST rate.
Yeah, and then that would be very hard for the brands to regulate that, wouldn't it? It'd be very hard for them to get their hands on it. And I don't know, what do you think, Terry? Have you ever bought from Joma Shop? Or
No, I haven't. And again, looking into Joma Shop for when you mentioned the subject, I was quite surprised about what you can find listed on there. 45 grand Rolex, Tudors. I don't suppose they're all the most up-to-date and recently released models, but I'm with Steve on that one. The idea of spending that sort of money on a watch and not having the experience with an AD, like I'm looking to buy my first, what I consider luxury watch, a Tudor Black Bay Pro next year, and I want that experience at my AD. But for me, it's a lot of money, and I want to make a big deal out of it. One, because I think then that will make me a little bit better connected to the watch and to the experience and to the memories I have getting that watch. And the idea of just like buying Seiko, you go online, click the inbox, chuck it in your cart, and wait for the postman to arrive. Just doesn't do it for me at all. So not something I would look into in Joma Shop to do, that's for sure.
So I have a question as the newer guy in the group. I hear two sides of this story about the AD experience. I hear the part leading up to it and the part where you get the watch. And often it's the same people talking out of both sides of their mouth. They'll be like, oh, I got to go do the song and dance with the AD. I got to build a relationship. I got to buy something else just to get something else. It'd be like me going to an Audi dealership and I got to buy an A3 in order to get an S6 or something, whatever. Right. And then at the same time, they're like, oh, I got to go to the AD and have the whole AD experience where I got my watch and it was so great. And I got a glass of champagne. Yeah. But are you getting paid for your time? Like all the time that you went there ahead of time to basically, I don't know, and I guess in some cases placate someone's ego, or B, show that you're not a flipper, which I get that. And then you get the experience. Does it all add up? Or once you get the watch, and this isn't directed at you, Terry, I'm just asking generalization. And then once you get the watch and you get the experience and they hand you your Diet Coke and you get to open the box and everything else before it's forgiven. Because I'm not that kind of business between you and me. I don't want to go into somewhere else and be like, oh, hey, Paul, it's so nice to see you. Oh, let me see that Citizen. I'll buy this $560 watch I'm not going to use and give away to someone else just so I might be lucky enough to get a phone call to spend the money that I work for in your establishment? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think there's two different types of relationship with your AD. There's a big multi-brand AD. In fact, there's a street in Melbourne where there's like, I think I counted 25 different watch shops and boutiques and everything. And I routinely just wander through. And what I would say is there are ones that make you feel really welcome, where it's an enjoyable experience to go. I go there on my lunch break because they will just talk about watches and let me try stuff on. Then there were the ones which, frankly, you've got to hold a gun to my head to go in because it's all very officious and it's just pain in the ass. Curiously, those are the ones where you generally have to build a relationship with the AD so that you can get your watch, and it's this paradox of the very ADs that want that sort of demand that you come in and deal with them are the least pleasant to deal with. So there was one brand AD that I started popping into just to play with their stuff, and I'm now on a first name basis with all the staff. I've been doing that for a year and a half, never thinking I was going to buy one of their watches, never thinking I could afford it. But then on this particular day, they had that one watch that I just couldn't resist, and they were as excited for me as I was. So, one of the guys runs out and he goes get some coffee, and we're just chatting out the back, and I think there's a sense of the perfect place to be is when your organic watch hobby and what you want to do and the relationship you want to have with someone else just lines up with that guy might also sell you a watch. It's when you have to force the friendship.
I think it's important then that we start to get these kind of stories out instead of the other one. Because I've taken in a lot of watch media, and all I ever hear about is how you basically have to, show up and do the song and dance. And that is not appealing to me in any way, shape, or form. And the only reason why is the guys that have been in the room for a while, my background. I'm not going to go in and cower to anyone and ask them any favors. Really? Bro, you should be coming to me. Or it should be a 50-50 thing where, you have no idea who I am, what I've done in my life, what I've accomplished, and why I'm here to get this piece. And just because it may not even be a family-owned store. It might be a boutique that's owned by the company, and you're a dude that just got hired there. Like, what, am I supposed to acquiesce myself to you? And that might be a pride thing on my part that I got to deal with. And we can talk about that later, Pete, in Watch Psychology 101.
It's a subject for next week. I'll write it down.
Yeah, because that's it. I would like to hear, as a newer guy who watches stuff, I think it's important for some channels to get those good, like when we had Justin on the show, I felt like if I went into Justin's boutique, it'd be a great experience. Justin would talk to me, let me try some stuff on. If I didn't want to get something that time, I could come back. But that was like a pebble of sand on the beach compared to everything else I hear. And none of it's ever positive. You know what I mean?
I've only ever had positive experiences in Rolex ADs. I know that's one that people sometimes have had funny experiences with. But even when I went back home to Manchester, I went into a Rolex AD just to ask whether they had this green dial to look at. And I explained to the guy, I don't live here and stuff. And he's like, just sit down and we'll try on the different sizes. He knew I wasn't even going to buy it there. Like, he knew that I was in a different, because he's like, no, you need to go on the list where you're based. And same with what Terry was saying about the AD experience. They treated me like a royalty when I was buying this watch. And this is, arguably their mid to entry level Rolex. And it really did add to the whole experience. I mean, granted, I couldn't have bought it online anyway, but I don't know. What's anybody else got opinions on that?
I totally agree. And I think that, watches should be held back from online experience as much as possible. If people have to go into the boutique to get their Moonswatch, I think that's a perfectly valid thing. Wouldn't you agree, Sam?
Steve, what do you think on this?
No, absolutely not. I think it's a terrible thing. I mean, and I was on a previous live stream about this as well, and I would ask you, what if you have some sort of disability or or you don't have a Swatch boutique in your town. I mean, I live in Austin, Texas, which is not a small city. We don't have a Swatch boutique here. Also, we don't have a Zenith boutique here as well. So I had to buy my Zenith online from an AD. So I absolutely do not agree with that. Sorry.
No. I'm just having a Sam and I have been trading blows over the Moonswatch.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I actually finally swung into we have one Moonswatch boutique in my city, and I finally swung over there and had a chat to them. And it was interesting. They were very pleasant about it. They were, but yeah, some things they're getting multiple. Oh,
we just got a huge super chat. Thank you so much, Muhammad Ali. That is absolutely amazing. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. The watch price falls on the hype models are good for enthusiasts. The less margin between retail and secondary, the less profitable it is for them, and the more watches will be owned by people who want to wear them, enjoy them. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the very generous super chat. Very much appreciated. Sorry, Pete, cut you.
Yeah. Oh, so I didn't want to make it a Moonswatch thing, but I couldn't resist the dig, as we're just all talking about the AD experience. But yeah, just very quickly. Yes, they're pumping them out as fast as they possibly can. My boutique is receiving between 1 and 3 deliveries every week. They are all sorts of staggered. There's all sorts of fun and games they play to make sure that they can't be watched or seen. And they use different companies and all sorts of stuff. And they generally sell out within an hour to 2 upon arriving at the shop, and nothing has slowed down. And yeah, we were talking about, what if they made them available online? And his view was they would simply be permanently out of stock. You would never see them.
Yeah. Did you see Adrian at Bark and Jack's broke his?
Yeah.
That's the whole separate thing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's been awesome. I don't know, any final thoughts on the we kind of went to AD experience, didn't we? Todd, you have a great relationship with your AD, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
for new stuff that they carry, Little Switzerland and St. Thomas, and Dean Bump, who's been on your show before, who I've known for a while, is my AD, and it's a terrific experience when you know somebody like that, right? But yeah, I mean, because you get the beauty of it is that they're not a single watch seller, and you can look at a number of them. So when I bought the Bucherer, I had it sitting next to a JLC Polaris and a Moonwatch at the time. And, I could sit there and look at them both. I could compare this and that and that. And so I think that's a great way to go about something if you're not exactly sure of what you want, and you want to kind of look around and understand the pluses and minuses of the watch. I think it's a great experience, especially at St. Thomas. It's really nice, It's not bad at all. And then there's no sales tax, and there's no duty on it. So, yeah,
awesome. Well, that's been fantastic, guys. Any final thoughts on that? If not, I'll wrap it up and thank everyone for the comments.
Say happy birthday to Muhammad Ali.
Yes, happy birthday, Mohammed.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Right. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I think this is the most we've ever had people attending live. So very, very much appreciated. We enjoy all of the comments. Thank you for everyone that joined. Thank you for all the guys from the Teen Tickers live stream that joined as well. Very much appreciated. And we'll see you all next time on Casual Watch Talk Live. Thanks, everyone. Bye.